Hi, thank you guys for coming. I'm really excited to work with you today. As you just heard, I'm Sarah Seastream. I'm a member of the Hannes-Coos tribe out of the south coast of Oregon. I have a show up right now here called Ballast. You may have seen it. If not, I hope you do see it. I also spoke about that like 5 times when I was here at the beginning of the month. And so one of those lectures was videotaped, and you can see it on the MAM website or go to YouTube. It's 30 minutes. I'm a little out of words at the beginning, but I warm up, and you can get some of the basics on how my paintings are made. And I'm going to speak to my work a little bit as it relates to some of my contemporaries in my lecture today. I'm from, like I said, the south coast of Oregon. I grew up on the Umpqua River Valley and also in Portland, Oregon, so back and forth, super urban, super rural. It's a pretty common story. All of the people in my family are artists in one way or another. My parents are both architects. Everybody did art, my auntie, everybody. So it's kind of part of growing up in my family. I was educated in the public school system in Portland. I also went to a parochial school for a little bit. I think we have some Catholic people here too. So I have the spectrum of those experiences. I went to Portland State for my undergraduate work, and I studied art and geology because, as I was speaking with some of you guys, I like rocks and paint. Then I went to graduate school in New York at Pratt Art Institute, where I got a master's in fine art. My emphasis there was painting and sculpture and photography and printmaking, so I have kind of a multi-dimensional way of interacting with the world. Professionally, I'm an educator, scholar, and so I build a lot of theory for different museums and education kind of ideas in the studio arts as well as in native arts. I work for Northwest Indian College. I'm teaching a museum studies course there that I do online. I'm an artist and an educator, and I look at both of those activities as sort of activist work, So I'm really grateful you guys are here. It's really exciting to speak to a bunch of educators. We're such a critical group on where things are introduced to the world. So my mission today is that you'll come away from this lecture with some updated ideas about Native culture and people. There are going to be some ideas that you hear today that might challenge the ideas that you came into the conversation with, and they might be ideas that you're very attached to. You may even recognize yourself in some of the critical content that's put across, and it may make you feel uncomfortable. Please understand there's no blame in this conversation. We were all taught the things that play a disservice to Native culture and also non-Native culture as we try to live and work together. And so it's not a critical conversation. It's just an idea that we can start to update. One of the primary misconceptions I hope that we can disengage today is, and from your teaching practice as well as your thinking, is that Native people are extinct and to be romanticized as noble savages. We do not conform to the romantic notions of Western mythology. We are far from extinct, and in fact, we are all around you almost every day. We're educated, sophisticated, and thriving, and this is not a new phenomenon, but a tradition. We do not think, look, or live the way that those outdated notions you were taught may have led you to believe. By investigating our creative lineage and property, some of those ideas can be laid to rest. Because you're educators, you're in a powerful position to influence, and I like the idea of math in relation to this. Each day you're working with a group of people that you're influencing, and those people go on their own way to build their lives, and they're working with those ideas that you gave them and passing those on to the next batch of people that they touch. So that's the math. If you do a good job, the world gets better. I'm hoping to give you tools today that can contribute to the future that we all want to be a part of and we can all thrive from. So that's kind of the ethic of what I'm trying to do with the position I've gotten myself into at this point in my life. So art from any culture is a canister of human accomplishment and a record of our history collectively. So that's kind of what I think it is. The way I'm going to do some of the stuff, I'm going to lay up the criteria for Western art and then compare that to the criteria for Native art and then give you some kind of definitions. So this might be stuff you want to take notes on. The criteria for Western art is that it elicits a visceral reaction in the viewer. What that means is that you think you can taste it, you can hear it, you can feel it all through your eyes. Or it produces thought, prolonged thought. So you look at a painting or whatever, and you don't recognize everything in it, and you start to ask questions, you start to get new ideas, or you go away from the art and a week later it pops into your head. You know, it keeps talking to you. That's a criteria of fine art from the Western canon. Another criteria is that it's informed by the past ideas and movements in the field. So it already knows, like you make a painting, it needs, if it's fine art, it needs to be informed of the lineage of ideas that came before it and making a new comment in that piece of work. The other thing is that it needs to be reflective of the time that it was made from. So if you're looking at work today, it might look like the language of the world that you see around you. And it's making some kind of comment with that about the world that we're living in. Another criteria for fine art from the Western canon is that the craft is impeccable. The artist is a master of all the materials that they've used, and all of the design elements and everything are completely considered. It may seem very raw, but it has to be through intention, not lack of skill. You see what I mean? So those are the primary criteria for the Western canon of fine art. The criteria for Native American art, it follows all the same categories. All the same things can be found in Native American art. One of the differentiating factors that makes it Native versus Western is that a Native American person made it. And so a Native American person is someone who has blood relation to Native American people, period. So if you are a non-Native person, you don't have any ancestry in Native, in the Native community, then even if you make work that's influenced and looks exactly like Native art, it is not to be considered Native American art. That's an important critical difference. Then the other things that go into Native art are really exciting too, and I'm going to tell you about those today. So in Native art, we have three kind of categories that we're looking at right now as ways of talking about Native art. And keep in mind too that this is language that we're developing right now in Indian country, in academia. And so when you get into defining things, it gets tricky and people can instantly get upset. And so let's all try to, for these conversations, just know that we're working towards a better understanding. And the three primary categories that we see in Native art right now are contemporary, customary, and traditional. So traditional artwork is artwork that is made by a person who has traditional training. So that means that they have learned their craft from a master artist that has learned their craft from a master artist, both physically and the knowledge that's given through verbal communication. All of those things go back thousands of years and are given from one generation to the next. And so for a Native artist to be making traditional artwork, it means that the materials are gathered in the same way that they've been gathered for thousands of years. The knowledge about how to gather those materials is thousands of years old. Where you go to get those things, how you handle those things, how you integrate them together, all of those things are given to the artist from someone who is given that knowledge from someone who is given that knowledge. And the form remains the same. And so if you are making a traditional basket, say, today, it should, if you have mastered it, sit next to your teacher's basket, and they should be clearly related. What makes this contemporary, or in the criteria of Western art, why this is making a contemporary statement, is because it's being made today in the same way that has been made for thousands of years, which is a massive political undertaking, if you can follow that, okay? So that's traditional art. Customary art is the customary art is made by someone who has traditional training, but they are doing a deviation of the form. Maybe they're bringing in new materials. They maybe are abstracting those things, but you can clearly see the lineage of those traditional values and those traditional knowledge kind of canisters. So we'll look at work that is customary today. Contemporary Native American art is made by a Native American artist that has a complete invention of formal criteria. So like the paintings that I do that you guys might have seen upstairs, that's contemporary. Now, just as knowledge on me, I'm working now to acquire my traditional knowledge, and so for the criteria in like native culture, I have contemporary, some customary, and some traditional, but my work is not traditional yet. One day. All three categories are prized in native culture, and all three categories are being made today by living people. Okay, living people, living people, living people. We're all around you, and we're making incredible things all the time. And all three of those things have really neat property, tons of it. So those are the three kind of categories that we've been working in Indian country to identify as just part of the wealth of our knowledge and technology. The first part is Rick talking to us about his work, and I want to share something with you. I hope he won't mind. He recently has had a stroke, and it didn't affect his physical, but it did his verbal. And so that we're going to be able to, and he's working with therapists and of course making great strides, and you know, only the best intentions for that. But I share that with you because being able to hear him speak is a critical treasure. And this is what's so exciting about technology today, is that it's recorded and we have this stuff. And if you guys are inspired on YouTube, there's lots more video of him speaking, and he's also a musician, and so playing his pink electric guitar. And so anyhow, I'm gonna go ahead and try to start it up now.
That still is. And I could go on for days about things in my life that have proved to me that what was remains today. I wish we could have gotten a little farther away from Northwest Coast, but the fact is, it's not just Northwest Coast here. Many people have stories of the raven, many people have stories of the bear, and many of those stories sort of lock in. They coincide, you know, that one's a rascal and one concerns great medicine. And again, in the sweat house, the bear was the old man, but here we're calling it grandmother bear. Because on the coast, the women were the hammers and the men were the nails, and so you did what you were told. And the women, there were no chiefs to speak of, but the women were certainly at the top of the protocol in the medicine, so for that reason I call it a grandmother. However, in my mind, in my little way in this project, the bear is always Walter Lawrence Klamath, my old elder up at the sweat house. And we loved him, and we still love him. And in this poll, he'll be up where he can watch the people, and he will be revered. One time we had 10 people working on this at once, just from the community. This represents community and family, and frankly strangers that we didn't know, that wanted to come and put their hands on it and make a mark. And indeed they made a mark, and their mark will hopefully last a long, long time. And there's a spirit that was imbued by friends and sweetheart and relatives and family and community members here that have all put their little bit of love and energy into it, and it's real. You know, it's not just a woo-woo new age kind of thing. This is reality here, you know, and a big several thousand pounds completely goofy compared with Northwest Coast work, and yet this is no less than the North Coast work, and it's big, and it commemorates family and lineage and clans, and to me the generations are little waves moving up the pole gently. Marc Chagall said, "Let us attempt to find something in our work that's authentic." And this is about as authentic as John and I can get, because I hold John back from his vision because this is my vision. But by putting his 2 bits in there, he's offering what he can to that view to make it work in a beautiful way. Not hardly a day goes by that John and I don't stop an evening or something and we're talking about how lucky we are to be able to pursue this in our life and to be able to go here and go there and be able to work with tools. Geez, we love tools. We just love tools and what they do. But as far as any connection with the past or with anybody, we can't really say that. We've got a connection with the way to do the work, in that this is hollow, and there are traditional and native and non-traditional native ways that John knows of carpentry and construction and Oriental wisdom to put things together, and colonial wisdom, really. We did the same thing over here when you didn't have nails. But so there is tradition in it, but we don't call it a totem pole. I'm happy we don't call it that, because I think that was a bit disrespectful. And I think also it makes people have a mindset, totem poles and thus and such. And so I call it right from the gate. I've always called these things pole sculptures. So just as we're all here today, this is where we're supposed to be. For what reason? We have reasons that we think, but there may be something beyond that. Maybe we can reach down the road, as they say, from 7 generations behind us to here, and 7 generations from here before us. That's the span of our ability to move. And maybe we're laying something down here that's not just an old poop talking about what he's been doing, but maybe it's a door to open for somebody younger before us, down that 7 generations, to say, if that knothead can do it, I can. Or if he can do that, if they can do that, we can do it. So, it's a visitation of the Spirit, and once the Spirit was there, we couldn't turn around. We had to go forward, and we're still doing it. And it's a strange mixture right now, thinking we can get out of this meat locker, but geez, what do we do now? We've been coming here every day for 8 months now or something, or just about every day, and we took some time off. It's hard to think about not having this job. But then it's silly to say that, because just as the Spirit visited us here, Lord knows what's going to happen next.
So the first piece we're going to look at in the old school slide lecture way is this. I start off these conversations with some biographical information because it's important. For this, we're really lucky. Gail Tremblay, who I spoke of earlier and we're going to speak about again, is also a writer, and she wrote this bio of Rick. It's brilliant, so that we can have her do everything. So Rick Bartow was born in 1946 in Newport, Oregon, to a Yurok and Wiyot father who relocated to Oregon for work and married Bartow's Euro-American mother. His artwork is influenced not only by his Native American heritage, Western artists like Francis Bacon and Chagall, but also by the effects of a traumatic 13-month tour of duty in Vietnam. Contact with artists in Germany, Japan, and New Zealand also inspire his work. He's best known for pastel and graphite drawings, prints, and mixed media sculptures. His art has been widely exhibited in the United States and internationally. Bartow is also a musician and singer with his own band. He plays the guitar. Today I want to share with you a sculpture by Bartow titled Ursa Major. The title Ursa Major, also known as the Great Bear, refers to the constellation visible throughout the year in most of the Northern Hemisphere. It can also be seen in the month of April best. It's dominated by the widely recognized constellation known as the Big Dipper, which is a useful pointer towards north and has mythological significance in numerous world cultures. This is a lighthearted piece. It's based on a story an elder Bartow would sit with, who has since passed, loved to tell him. The story was based on how Big Bear became a part of the constellations in the sky. In the story, there's a child sitting on the back of a flying bear. As the piece was coming into being, Bartow's daughter, who was about 5 at the time, just knew the child on the bear's back was her. During the ceremony to induct this piece into the collection, Lily, his daughter, climbed up on the sculpture to show everyone that it was her on the bear's back. If you look closely at this piece, you can see that Lily's name is written on it, and also the scuff marks made by her new shiny shoes during the ceremony. It was the new embedded meaning in the piece relates to children's beliefs and parental beliefs as they commingle over objects and stories. So if you ever go to Portland, do try to see this piece. It is lovely, and it's pretty big. You know, I mean, it's on the way to what we call monolithic. It is definitely as big as you are. So when you're looking, you're like kind of, that raven is almost taller than you, you know? If you imagine a 5-year-old is to scale sitting on the back there. Okay. And it is, he's got traditional training, so he can make traditional work. He makes customary work, but this is absolutely contemporary. Well, it could walk both ways because it's referencing the story that we recognize. But it also is brand new form, like the stuff he was talking about. All right, so we're going to go into the next piece, if I can make the machine do what I'm asking it to. Yes. Okay, Sherrod Yonker and Tony Johnson. Sherrod Yonker is a cousin of mine. He's from the Moloch side of the Coos clan. Tony Johnson is Chinook. This is a public artwork, and there's 2 slides of it. It's from the OSU Native American Longhouse, or Enos House, or Beaver House. This is an example of customary Native artwork. The working definition of customary, I'll repeat for you, is artwork that has been created by a Native artist who has traditional training, but the work may deviate from traditional form in 1 or 2 major ways. You should be able to visually detect the linkage to the traditional forms. Traditional training, as I've already told you, is, you know, I'm actually not going to repeat that again. This project is a metaphor between baskets, blankets. Oh, I'll try to get rid of that thing for you. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, I know, you guys. I'm not so great with all this stuff. No, I'm just making it worse. Okay, I'll just...
From current slide. Open tab, from current slide.
From current slide. Okay. Oh, yeah, but will I be able to move? You're going to have to be my helper. Great. All right. Okay. Great. This project is a metaphor between baskets, students, place, education, or a door opening, and direction to remind us of home. The center becomes a basket, something produced culturally to hold and collect valuable resources, both in the material and technical knowledge contained in the construction of the object, but also in the function of the object. Each of the Oregon tribes is represented by a basket pattern that is carved into the metal plates and installed in the architecture of the building. By doing this from a design standpoint, the artists are employing the concept of variety. This term is defined as the difference that gives a design visual and conceptual interest. In places like the front door panel where the Oregon tribes are represented in the previous slide of the project, if we look at the project as a whole, we can see the artists working with the concept of unity. In design, we define unity as a compositional similarity, oneness, and togetherness or cohesion. When you stand inside the building and look at each of the plates, you'll be facing the direction of the tribal land that is represented on the plate that you are looking at. When you're inside the center, you're inside the basket, and that is created by marrying all of these patterns together around you. For the Native student, this is a gift to orient themselves in the journey of their education, while looking to home to keep culturally intact while building on the foundation during the journey into the future. So the next 2 pieces, the one on the left is a painting that I made called Whale Cloud Portrait of Sheldon Skeeley's Face. And the one on the right is a painting that Sheldon Skeeley made called Critical Mass. These 2 paintings are relations and have a funny story of origin. They speak to contemporary Native community. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Facebook. It's a social media portal. And I love it. And a lot of my friends are on there, 850 of them. And we hang out in my house on the computer. And tons of Native people are also on it, and you should befriend me, and then we can be part of the same group. So, you know, it's interesting and fun, and I'm always putting stuff on there or passing along things I see. And one time I saw this comic strip, and so it was called How to Draw a Face. The first cell of the comic strip is a cell that just has a circle on it. And then the next cell is one of those Renaissance drawings that's really amazing of a face, and it says, draw the rest of the face. And so, how funny is that, right? So I posted that, and then Sheldon was like, draw me, and I was like, all right. So the next day in my studio, I made this painting that's on the left, and to me, it really looked like a whale in the top. And this slide is not as good as, in real life, it's a lot more vibrant. The reds are more like the red that you know from upstairs. So it's a little hard to see, but it looked like a whale cloud to me. And then, so he totally said that was fine. That could be a picture of him. So now I'm going to tell you some about Sheldon. Sheldon's grandmother was born to the killer whale clan, but I had no knowledge of this. My paintings are pure improvisation and an enactment of a process. There's no plan or idea where it will end or where it will begin. It's after they're completed that I title them and look into them for reference to the outer world. This painting just looked like a whale morphing from the cloud over water. So I named it, shot it, shared it, was congratulated, and went on with my life. Then a few months ago, Sheldon created his painting, Critical Mass, which you see right next to the portrait I made of him. When I saw it, I immediately thought of the painting I had made the year before, brought it to his attention, and we were both delighted on the closeness of the images and all of the things embedded that neither of us had thought of or known consciously when we created our paintings. Sheldon Skele is a customary native artist. He is a painter who works from the tradition of formline, a style of art that comes from the Northwest Coast tribes, the Haida and Tlingit tribes specifically. It's distinguished by the use of the characteristic shapes referred to as ovids, U-forms, and S-forms. Form lines are continuous, flowing curvilinear lines that turn, swell, and diminish in a prescribed manner. They are used to figure outlines, internal design elements, and to create abstract compositions. When he's working in the palette of the Haida, the paintings are in the red, white, and black, and sometimes turquoise range. When he is referencing his Lakota roots, he will broaden his palette to include yellows and pinks and blues to the Haida spectrum and the formline style. This morphing and the use of acrylic paint are what categorize his work as customary. Do you guys follow that? You see how that works? Okay. He says of his background, I started out in California, spent my formative years in Seattle, 3 to 10, not knowing much about my heritage. Then moved to Ketchikan, Alaska with my grandparents whose first language was Haida. My Nana was born in the Shark House in Skidgate. Killer Whale Lady comes to us, a regal name. She got around by Haida canoe, but there were also devout Christians. I was always perplexed when I heard my Nana say the Lord's Prayer in Haida. Right? But they were part of that generation, I guess. She was born in 1899 and lived to be 97. My mom was from the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. I should mention that I was unaware of my Haida heritage as a youth, but my mom told me who my other people were, Oglala Lakota. She could speak Lakota fluently, learning it in spite of the boarding school she was forced through, and she let me know from a very young age what our people went through. My first time I met Skeldon, he was riding down Old Town on a skateboard, and it's got to be one of the most beautiful images I have in my head because he's just like this incredible, he's as fluid on that thing as he is in paint. So he's one of my favorite contemporaries. This is his latest stream of consciousness description of his painting titled Critical Mass. It's based on killer whale in humanoid form, translated into modern weaponry. In Haida mythology, killer whale lives in an underwater village near human villages. I thought it echoed that form anyway, but in this case, it's also a nuclear bomb at the point of detonation. The tongue extending out to really convey a message, as in traditional reference. In this case, it's not a real bomb, but the traditional artistic rendition, horror, reverence, sort of taking on a dark crest like the bear mother, a dark story-based crest, frog crest, and another dark crest or lava woman. I thought of it as a message to the past using traditional conventions, a weapon to zing them, a way to describe the unbelievable power and constant battle legacy we've achieved, precariously balanced. Maybe I'm making a new crest, he asks, through art and mythology, tradition and modern, reclaiming the power. What they've done is separate us for so long that we almost forgot that when we are in a large enough group, we can go critical, and it's happening right now. I think he's speaking to the Idle No More movement with that one. So that's him, and watch for him because he's coming up. So that was done in this year. Now, yes?
So he is using these traditional forms, but he's innovating within those forms. That is not a traditional...
No. Yeah. Yeah, he's creating a new design based on the knowledge and the designs of original form line. And it also deviates in the materials. Acrylic is made out of plastic, which is not a traditional material. And so that's how he becomes customary, as well as the inclusion of the palette from Lakota art, which is those pinks and those other colors. This one is the traditional red, white, and black that comes out of West Coast, but he also, in his work, when you start to learn about him, he'll have the same kind of ovid pattern that we have here, where he's making the design out of the same kind of ideas, but then he'll add new colors, and so that.
This is very useful acrylic also makes it customary.
Yeah.
Than the traditional paints.
Yeah. I mean, this painting is on canvas, you know, and that's a kind of a Western tradition in painting. So, yeah, it's going that way. Yeah. Yeah. So the next. So you guys who know how to do all this stuff, how do I get out of the full screen because I want to share another video with you? Cool. You say it like it's just so obvious. You might think. Okay. But that's okay because this will give me back, I think, where I want to be. All right. So the next artist I'm going to share with you is Nicholas Galanin. I always say his name wrong, so sorry for being so clunky. I'm working on it. I'm going to share... Well, I'm going to tell you a little bio first. So he is both a contemporary, well, he's all three. He's contemporary, customary, and traditional native artist. He was born in 1979 in Sitka, Alaska, and is mixed Tlingit, Aleut, and non-native ancestry. He went to the London Guildhall University, where he earned his BFA with honors in jewelry design and silversmithing, and Missoula University in New Zealand, where he earned his master's degree in Indigenous visual arts. He has traditional training in the visual arts of carving, painting, and jewelry making. He works in the form line style within these disciplines. In his contemporary work, he makes video, sculpture, and works in printmaking. This work is conceptual and usually carries over political content. There's usually crossover in the work, which you will see in these video clips I'm going to share with you. Further, he's a musician. He writes, sings, plays the guitar, and produces about one album a year, and works communally to produce a music festival called Skillet Fest every summer in Sitka, where he features artists like Laura Gibson and Little Wings. I encourage you to spend some time exploring his work online. Now I'm going to just show you some video, and then we'll look at some of his customary work. So these two videos I'm going to share with you are sisters, and they are how I use these two pieces I use to describe the concept of economy. In design, in art, when we use the word economy, we're talking about the distillation of the elements down to their most critical use. So they're really, there's nothing excess. Every single piece and part of what you see is intended and important to work together to get the idea across. These videos are about 4 minutes. We're just going to watch a couple minutes of them because you'll get the idea. Okay, so that's the first piece. As you can see, the elements are the music, the dancer, and the screen. The screen, you should know, that Nicholas made as an apprentice to his uncle in his teenage years. So that's to tell you about his training. And that's a form line screen, so you now will know that. The next piece, which is the answer to that, so there's that contemporary music married to those traditional elements. This piece flips the script. Yeah, so this piece, he commissioned both the dancers in both pieces, and this man is a very famous dancer who works with Michael Jackson and everybody else. He's a really talented, amazing person, and so, yeah, I mean, he's amazing, right? And so this piece is traditional music and then contemporary dance and a stripped-down environment, so we just have those two elements playing against each other. And both of these pieces have complex, multi-layered meanings. If you go onto Vimeo, there's an incredible lecture that Nicholas gives out of Evergreen. You should look for that and potentially bring it to your classroom. It's about an hour, and he breaks down so much incredible stuff and speaks to his work in a way that I wouldn't try to compete with at all. But I wanted to share you these things so that you could start to see a little bit of what he does that's so sensitive and so beautiful. When we get into his more traditional work, or not traditional, but his customary stuff, although the traditional is there big time, he starts out as a jewelry maker. So this is Robert Rauschenberg. He was born in 1925 and he died in 2008. We would classify his work as contemporary Native American art. He was Cherokee, German, and Anglo-Saxon. He had that descent line. He worked in painting, sculpture, printmaking, dance, and performance. He collaborated with and was contemporaries of most of the progressive avant-garde artists from the middle to the end of this century. He broke numerous boundaries and conventions in art and created new forms almost every decade he was alive. By the Western canon of fine art, Rauschenberg is considered one of the most sophisticated and prized superstars that have ever come out of America. While he was living, his native ancestry was underplayed or left out completely, as was the custom of the times, and it was only in the last decade that there has been mention of it, and it is at a whisper. However, if we are to consider the native context in relation to the work, it changes the read considerably of all of American Western art. It's my practice to show respect to the wishes of the artist when I speak of them. Because he passed away a number of years ago, I went to his son Christopher Rauschenberg, who happens to live in Portland and runs the Blue Sky Gallery, which is a serious international treasure. Again, if you go to Portland, try to visit it. I told him I would like to speak of the native content in the work educationally, and would he mind, and further, did he think his father would object? He said that it would be just fine, although his father did not think of himself as just one thing. He was a lot of things, just like his work. When he mentioned that Rauschenberg Sr. was also dyslexic, and thought that was pretty important also, and that might be something we're sharing with the young people, me too, and probably half the people in this room. Maybe they could find themselves in the work through that idea. Today, I'm sharing this piece with you called Patrician Barnacle. It's a mixed media assemblage piece. In his work, there are often intimate materials included as collage elements. In this piece, the triangular form is covered with a floral bedsheet. This creates an automatic intimacy that underpins the imagery that is transferred onto it. It's fortunate that this piece contains transfer because he's an innovator of this technique. It came about as a studio accident. Some solvent was spilled on a stack of magazines and overlooked, and some of the images were transferred from the magazines to the canvas beneath. When he saw that, it informed him of a technique to transpose print material right into his work, a huge jump to make the work speak with the language of its time. Remember that? When we see this sort of thing, it's very familiar now, and modern technologies are by the minute inventing new ways to expand on this idea. However, he was the one to really make this collage language sing, and we can look at him as an innovator of this marriage. I was thunderstruck when I found out that he had Native ancestry, and I got to go to his show, a retrospective of his combines, and he's a major hero of mine from my education, but I'd never heard that he was Native, and then it was printed right up on the wall, and it changed everything for me when I saw that, and it makes so much sense to me that this is Native work. So it's really important to me to also spread that word because it isn't taught yet. Well, it is now, but it wasn't, and so that's something that we can all look to because he's so famous and beloved, but you know, it's Indian. Yes. I'm not, but yeah, definitely. I'm going to move on to Marie Watt, but does anybody want to ask anything or say anything about this Rauschenberg piece?
It's amazing. I didn't, until you said this, I had no idea.
I know. Nobody talked about it. I mean, that's part of our collective culture, you know. It's just like in order to make, I mean, if he had said that he was Native, if this work was categorized as Native, it might have been dismissed.
Oh, they would have looked at it differently.
Right.
His name sounds so German to me.
Well, I think his name, I think yeah, I think it may have been Jewish.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, and I can't remember where from, but I mean, my name is Swedish. You know, even though if you are being romantic, it sounds, you know, like it's something else. But yeah, I mean, we all are a lot of different things, you know. But why we're saying it's Native is because if you are blood related to Native people, you're part of our culture, you know. And whether you identify with it or not identifying with it is a Native experience. So that, you know, I mean, that all goes together. So it's just an effort to update what all these things mean. You know, and Native culture is about inclusion, not dismissal. So that, you know, for me. Okay. Oh, you guys need to go feed your meters. And I lied with all the extra talking I've done. We're only about halfway done with the first part. So we'll break with Rauschenberg. You guys can go feed your meters or go to the bathroom or whatever. Let's say we're going to start up again at 2:10. Great. Okay. Thanks. I think we're going to get going to get into the next part. So can we get the lights? Yeah. And are we good video, guys? Okay. So we're going to move on to Marie Watt, okay, tell me again how to make it good and big. So, okay, from current slide. All right. Thank you, guys. We're working together. Yeah, right? I love it that you guys did that sigh. That's contemporary art. It makes you swoon. Okay. Marie Watt is a contemporary Native American artist. She was born in 1967 and is a member of the Turtle Clan of the Seneca Nation. She holds a Bachelor of Arts from Willamette University and an MFA from Yale, which is, by the way, the most prestigious art school in America. She also studied at the Institute of the American Indian Arts. Her work has won many prestigious awards and is installed in numerous public venues, even in Portland, and has been displayed in museums all over the world, including MAM. She says, "My work explores human stories and rituals implicit in everyday objects. I consciously draw from indigenous design principles, oral traditions, and personal experience to shape the inner logic of the work I make. My recent work explores the history of woolen blankets. As I fold and stack blankets, they begin to form columns that have reference to linen closets, architectural braces, Trajan memorials, sculpture, Brancusi for one, the great totem poles of the Northwest, and the conifer trees which I grew up with. The material offers another layer of story that is physically and metaphorically woven into the work. like the cedar, which is considered to be a sacred natural resource for indigenous people of the Northwest, or the hope chest in which blankets are stored. Even if it's beautiful, that doesn't make it complete, she says. It has to be part of a conversation in the world to make it complete. The conversation is about identity. It's about connecting the parts of ourself that are isolated. It's about making bridges, both literally and figuratively. When I spoke with Marie about this lecture and asked her what she would have me ask for you to pass on to your students, she spoke of the power of the work to inspire thought and speak for itself. She said to start the conversation with your students with a question: what do blankets mean to you? To provide you with some meat or thoughts. Did you have a question? Okay. On how to further generate conversation, I will model a verbal deconstruction of the sculpture Almanac, beginning with the definition of the title. It sounds gory, but it's pretty fun. The deconstruction. Almanac, an annual publication that includes information such as weather forecasts, farmers' planting dates, tide tables, and tabular information in a particular field or fields, often arranged according to the calendar, etc. Astronomical data, and I love that word. Astronomical data and various statistics are also found in Almanac, such as at the time of the rising and setting of the sun and moon, eclipses, hours of the full tide, stated festivals of churches, terms of the court, lists of all types, timelines, and more. Blankets. In Native communities, blankets are given away to honor life's significant moments, births, naming ceremonies, marriages. It's as much of a privilege to give a blanket away as to receive one. It's a ceremony that celebrates, and both sides of the exchange are equally elevated by the moment. The blankets that Marie uses in her work come to her by donation and finds in thrift stores. Because they've been used, there is tremendous embedded history in them and emotional human content. This approach creates a communal engagement and a shared authorship in the creation of the work. This adds to the impact and potential for personal attachment to the viewer. Universally, blankets are significant as objects that shape to our bodies with use, comfort us, keep us warm, are present in moments of intimacy, rest, illness, and waking. From a historical political standpoint, there's a reference to the usage of disease-infected blankets as a tool of genocide against Native people by the U.S. government. Bronze. In Western art, bronze is a masculine material that represents power and prestige. It's highly elevated because of its expense. By bronze casting the blankets, Watt is nodding to and presenting the blankets into this lexicon, which I read as a distinctly feminist move. Ladies and gentlemen, reclaim cedar. Cedar is a significant material to indigenous people of the Northwest. By including this reclaimed material, Watt is making reference to this and her upbringing in the area. It is the foundation of this piece and shows its strength in the order, balance, symmetries, and power that it shows. The two other materials contain a sensation of movement and sway, a feeling of vulnerability and instability. The wooden base, however, feels sturdy and capable. Now I would like to draw your attention to direction, an actual or implied movement of an element within a design. By organizing these elements in this monumental column vertically, she is creating an implied linear connection from the earth to the sky, which is a reference to a core Seneca belief. When you view Almanac, your eyes make this line back and forth again and again as you move around the piece. She is physically guiding you to recognize this connection even if you do not realize it. It's a pretty powerful gift she's giving us. This differs from the vertical implications that are contained in non-native Western art. One last observation is based on an idea of contrast, the degree of difference between compositional parts. Contrast is created when two or more forces operate in opposition. In Almanac, there is a wonderful contrast of textures through the use of soft versus hard materials, as well as reference to temperature with cold versus warmth. When we look at the wool and the wood of the blankets, we know they will feel warm and rough, soft yet sturdy. When we look at the bronze, we know it will feel hard and cold and sort of slick. What do you think she could be trying to tell us with striking these comparisons and by ordering these materials as she has? Do the materials represent cultures? Is she creating a unity by using them together? Hopefully this is just the beginning of the conversation and potential interpretations. Yes?
I'm not sure what is bronze in that piece.
The blankets at the top, and then see the pink? The pink to the green are the only ones that are wool, and then everything below that light green one. Yeah. And this is huge. I mean, you see it now?
Everything
everything below the light green one is bronze?
Yeah, and everything above the pink one is bronze.
I kept thinking I can see the sway, but I don't know how.
Where the
stay
bronze,
up.
right. Well, it's got internal structure, you know, it's got to have some kind of post inside. The shimmery light one, it's kind of a baby pink blanket. It's got that you remember, I don't know if anyone was a thumbsucker, but that kind of like a sweet, like the part that the kid really loves on the edge, the edging is that. Yeah, really soft. And this piece is probably like 8 feet tall, if not taller. It's huge. And when it's properly installed, and I say properly because I'm real stuck up about how things are installed, it really floats in space and holds presence in a way that is pretty powerful. When we think about how scale operates in art, if something is very small, it's intimate, and we feel that we could act on it, you know, we could hug it or whatever, do stuff to it, objectify it somehow. When something's about 1-to-1, where it's somehow in scale with you, like that Bartow piece right there, you know, that has a different kind of a confrontation. When something's way bigger than you, we have a certain kind of a respect for it that we feel physically. And so she's playing with that scale here in this piece, this incredible piece. So I'm going to go on to the next artist unless there's any more questions about this. All right. I'll move. Oh wait, that's one too many. Okay. Lillian Pitt is a contemporary native artist from the Warm Springs, Wasco, and Yakima tribes. She's a mixed media artist who has work in many collections, galleries, and museums, as well as multiple public works. She's an elder artist with a rich history in the mentorship to up-and-coming native artists. She's been instrumental in my career and many of my contemporaries. If you live in the Northwest or in Montana, you will probably pass something she has made every day. Currently, she is working to complete the Confluence Project, a huge public art project with Maya Lin about the Columbia River Gorge, as well as educational projects with young people at Solilo. The object I will speak with you about today is called the Wasco Totem. It's named for her people in the Columbia River Gorge area, and that totem is kind of a tricky word, and so I don't know that she still likes that she called it this, but that's what it's called. She says of it, "This piece was my first totem, for lack of a better word. What I wanted to do was make a larger, full-figured piece. Prior to this, she had made standalone masks, but the size of the kiln limited the size of the work. So I made it in sections and had to figure out how to put it together. It happened that Rick Bartow was in town. Lillian lives in Portland. Rick lives at the coast. So I invited him over to help me work it out. This is just another happy example of community and collaboration. Look to the embedded information in the sculpture. The figure design is based on basket patterns. The wood is a 100-year-old barnwood, which has a wonderful embedded history. The exposed ribs that are found in the basket patterns are specific to the Columbia River Gorge area, but you will also see the exposed ribs in indigenous art from Bali, Australia, and South America. She went on to tell me that the spiral represents the navel, which indicates that we are all tied to our mother. The spiral in Hopi tradition, she told me, is the path to the perfect place, is never a straight line. The pattern on the pelvis represents water. We can't live without it, and the earth is made of it, she told me. When I asked about the legs, she just said that everything needs legs. Yeah, sometimes she's like, "You're pesky, just stop bugging me." So, you know, everything needs legs. The clay pieces are attached to the wood with copper wire, which was chosen because it was beautiful and available. This piece is always on display at the Portland Art Museum, so go say your hellos next time you're there.
So can you talk to us a little about why the word totem is tricky now? Does it have to do with the misappropriation of it by mainstream culture?
Yeah. Yeah. Did you guys all follow that, or do you want me to go further into it? Yeah. Totem poles are part of the property of Northwest Coast Art, and they are significant and powerful and incredible. And because of how impactful and amazing they are, they inform and then become the only thing that people in general think of as Native American art, because they're so impressive. They're monumental when we're talking about that. There were a lot of times we're made out of old growth, and so they're bigger than us by so many different ways. And then that form was then turned into an incredible kind of tourist sort of thing. So it's a way to get, you know, like the trinkets that you can buy, that, you know, and so it was turned into this commodity that kind of was overused all over the place, and then it takes the place in everyone's collective consciousness of the only thing that could be. And so it's a contemporary conversation to start to try to question that use, and that's what Rick Berteau was speaking to earlier, and why she, when I spoke to her, said that it was, for lack of a better word, for this kind of columnar way of representing something. So it's an appropriation issue mostly. Yeah, totally. Okay, so now this is a piece I did, and it's from the body of work that you know upstairs, and it's huge. It's probably like 7 feet across and 3.5 feet tall. So I'm going to use this as a bridge between Lillian, my mentor, and my last artist in this part of the talk, and conceptual predecessor to my work, James Lavador, or Jim, as those of us who are friends call him. This painting I made is called Caviar for Winter Food, and it comes from a conversation I had with Lavador 2 years ago at his home. We were speaking about coming up in rural places where money was tight. Salmon and venison were staples in our diets growing up, and not exactly a treat after the first few meals, unlike the delicacy they are thought of in fancy eateries today or at my house. I really love them now, but when I was little it was kind of like, oh, sometimes too much. He told me, I just wanted pizza, so, he told me a story about growing up in the Umatilla Indian Reservation and his memory of too much salmon. There was a company at the time who was harvesting the salmon eggs to sell as caviar. They had no use for the salmon carcass, so they would give them to the native people on the reservation. Jim told me about seeing his dad come home with the whole back of the pickup filled with fish. I couldn't get the image out of my mind. It's really something. You can see it, right? All the silver and red swaying in the truck as it bounces home. I just was obsessed with this. I couldn't get it out of my head. Now for more heaviness. So this sort of practice, however fertile visually and as a short-term solution to poverty, had some pretty severe and negative consequences. You can imagine what happens when you regularly remove the eggs from the life cycle of the fish. Whole species are wiped out in just a few years. Further, there is the mounting shame by implication that the native people then shoulder because they've eaten the salmon, as year after year they watch the fish dwindle. Then there are the long-term health implications for those people who've now ingested far more fish than they would have naturally, because these fish, remember, have now traveled through agricultural land, and also in this area, nuclear testing lands, and those chemicals from the innovation in farming and nuclear research have run off into the water, and these pesticides and chemicals end up first in the fish and now in the bodies of the people who eat them. We're now seeing new and more grotesque illness and pain in our elders as they reach the ends of their lives. I hope you've never seen someone die or endure terminal illness, but for those of us who have, we are forever altered by it. This painting was a lot more directly executed than my usual work. I didn't know what was going to happen until I got to the 4th or 5th black circle at the top of the painting. As I mentioned, I had been consumed by this idea and image of the carnage. When I drew that first row of circles, I was struck. Caviar. Those are the eggs. And I worked the rest of the image out rapidly like an effort of exorcism. The two primary gestures that are the meat of my work, for your question back here, the circle and the oval, were enough to express all of the information I needed to create this painting and relieve my inner life from the obsession with the image. In design, we use the term rhythm to defined as the presentation of multiple units in a deliberate pattern. By doing this, we create a sensation in the eye and mind of the viewer. I think you can pick up on the quality in this painting. As you know by now, I'm a painter. Well, before I go into the next part, do you guys want to have any questions on this guy? The way I'm looking at it, I'll walk up here, excuse me. The way I'm looking at it, these guys here are fish. You know, if you've seen salmon in real life, they're really, really big. So this is kind of to scale in the size of the painting what they are. So those black ones and these red ones are the eggs. These are the heads of the fish up here, you know, and these are the bodies. To lighten the mood, there's a term called biomorphism that I teach my students to use when it's things are referred to the body in painting. And I do this so that they are looking at their work and really checking everything. And so originally I'd done this painting and it had these two scallops here, which are my wave pattern, but then it becomes sort of a female body part. So I had to add this wave here so that, you know, I wouldn't be embarrassed. But those are just little ways we get through, you know. So biomorphism, now you know it. Based on the body. All right.
Is it actually on paper?
It is. All of my
And it's
work
so
is on
big?
paper. Yeah. Yeah, well, have you seen the paintings
I
upstairs
haven't
yet?
been up yet.
Go up there. Go up there. I paint on this BFK Reeves paper, and it's a really special paper. When you watch the video of me talking about the work, it goes into why I'm using it and all that. But it comes on a roll, and it's huge, so I can make these life-size paintings. And another embedded piece that I haven't talked about in Montana here, to make the work close to my heart, I pick like heights of my family. Like my dad's 6'4", so a lot of the paintings in the height are 6'4". My stepmom's 5'4", so I have it be her, you know. So all those little things are in there too. All these little embedded pieces to help me be close to it. So that's why the big ones are. So those are all based on secrets. Those are secrets. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so by now you know I'm a painter. And I'm going to backtrack for you for a moment. In 1999, I was looking at the Contemporary Northwest collection at the Portland Art Museum when I saw Lavador's painting for the first time, and I was thunderstruck. He's got it, I said out loud, and I got chills and felt a shiver run through me. His work is a landscape made out of a gesture. It looked more real than any landscape painting I'd seen before. You could see exactly how it was achieved. There were zero illusions. It was the land. It transmitted the same sensations of awe that actual interface with nature does. This is a thing I had sensed was possible to mine from the human gesture and is at the core of my painting, but I was still in the dark. I had not seen anyone really doing it before. I did not know that he was native or anything about him, just that he was speaking my language and I needed to know more. It's only in retrospect I can see the deep poetry in this, the exquisite lack of irony that he and I were saying all of the same things and had both come to it through an instinctual process and an interface with the contemporary world. Lavador was born in 1951. He's a contemporary Native American painter and co-founder of Crow Shadow Institute of the Arts. He's Chinook, Walla Walla, German, Irish, and French-Canadian from Pendleton, Oregon. His exhibition career began in the 1970s and has steadily grown since that time. He has become one of the most important living American painters working today. His paintings have won many prestigious awards, been included in numerous notable collections, major museum exhibitions, and private galleries. He's reached the international stage this year with his inclusion in the Venice Biennale, where his work represented American painting. I will begin my discussion of Lavador's work with a Max Beckmann quote. If you love nature with all of your heart, the new and unimaginable things in art will occur to you because art is nothing more than the transfiguration of nature, taking nature from one state into another state. Lavador is primarily self-taught. He grew up exploring his environment on the Umatilla Indian Reservation in western Oregon and using books and music to explore the world of art and culture. To name a few of his influences, we could note Charles Marion Russell, Rauschenberg, Diebenkorn, Pierre Bonnard, Turner, Franz Klein, Asian art, and the American jazz music movement. Lavador said he found that Western art is truncated. It's chopped off at both ends. It doesn't know where it's going, and it doesn't know where it comes from. It's just right here. Where I come from, there is a sort of like both ends. One is a connection with these deep roots, a past that is beyond memory, and the other is still connected to this trajectory. Where we are going, that there is still a place to go. I found out a lot about Western art, he said, is really depressing because it's doomed. There's no joy there. It's just really pessimistic. There's no vision for the future, none. It's total apocalypse. And you know, I was thinking, do you have to accept that? And I realized, no, you don't. He's so funny. He looks to the invention of jazz and the work of John Coltrane, Sun Ra, and Miles Davis. They actually deconstructed Western music, rearranging it, and came up with new things, which is pretty cool. It affected the world. It was a matrix for multiple cultures. Jazz started incorporating all of these polyrhythmic things from Africa, Nordic thought, and European stuff, all kind of emptied into jazz, and it all swirled around together and created these new things. I like to think of jazz as the bottom line, the core contemporary improvisational thought. If you really want to think in an excited state, listen to music or look at paintings. Because when Coltrane died, people thought he died unfulfilled. Because he had blasted everything apart and he didn't have enough time to put it together again. I said, maybe we could look at the work of Lavador as a continuation of this work and the place where the pieces start to come back together again for a new message and a new form. Lavador explains, I made something that came from the earth, and this is good stuff. It's good for you. You look at it. It's not going to fill you up with any bad thoughts that you didn't have to begin with. It's not going to put a virus in you that will turn you into a compulsive collector. It's color, it's movement, and I realize that this is a valuable commodity. There's a very simple thing, and it's a valuable thing. I see how it affects people. It lifts up their heart. It makes people swoon. It makes people gasp. I don't know exactly what it's doing, but I've been able to make things with my own hands right here where I grew up. It's like the earth is the source of all knowledge, way beyond accumulated knowledge in books and universities. There's another kind of knowledge that's even more valuable. The land and I are one. Every moment I had, I was out walking in these hills, canyons, exploring this land, and it informed me, it educated me, and it gave me stuff. It gave me a way to examine the world, to be able to contemplate a thing, look into it, and pull something out of it, to pull knowledge out. I had that capacity. You know, we all have that capacity to discover the truth of things, to be able to look into something and discover knowledge. I realized that making painting was another way of harvesting from the land, that it wasn't any different than picking berries or digging roots, fishing or hunting, that it was bringing a sustenance from creation into my being and information. Only this sustenance had to do with the mind. It's intellectual. It's engaged with the contemporary world and reality. To describe how he makes his paintings, he says, I use two elemental structures, a landscape and an architectural abstraction, a vortex and a grid. There's the flow of landscape, and then there's the intersection of the architectural structure, which is just like being in a room looking out a window with floors, angles, doors, ceilings, pathways. A painting is a complex event with many things going on in multiple levels. Close, far, color, layers, scrapes, strips, all swirled around by memories. I keep it all organized with structure. Structure is the bed to the river. When we look at this piece called Ground Strike here that I'm sharing with you from 1989, you can see that it's a seminal work. It's when he first is able to integrate these two structures of the architectural and the landscape into one statement, and when he really comes into his strength and his language as a painter. This work is comprised of 9 panels painted on linen. He used a very limited warm palette. The imagery is a landscape that changes from panel to panel as a fog or smoke sweeps over the surface of the land. When I asked about the title, he said there was a war going on, violence to the land. It was a bookmark to a time and place. It was an unhappy time for him personally and the country. He said whole mountains were exploding. When I asked him about butting the panels up against one another into the grid, the architecture, he said, individual paintings are events. They are things that just happen. When I work on many paintings at a time, they have a connection to one another. When you put them together, they create a certain kind of geometry or flow. The idea was to create another meaning or a way to find the infinite in the finite. He first saw it in the poetry of Octavio Paz. The logic of putting them together comes from his work Blanc, white with a space in between. He took these poems and juxtaposed two divergent subject matters together and creates an alternate thing that could say more than the individual work could alone. I leave it to you to interpret the meaning of these images when combined. So that's the slide lecture part. Do you guys want to have any questions about Lavador or this? I'll go a little bit further with it. So like I said, he runs Pro Shadow, and I have been able to go out there twice now to make prints. And most recently, I had a residency, so I was there for 2 weeks, and I made 4 edition prints and 6 monoprints with 10 different versions of them. And 2 of which are going to come here in the Escape, right? They're going to come here in the spring. So I've prepared just as much for this as I did the last, so if you've got the next 6 hours of your life, we can be together. I know that's probably not going to work out. So because Jason is here, I would like to share his work with you in the way that I've been doing things first. So, it's okay? All right. Hey, you may already know him. So he made this piece here, which is the S word. Yeah. And this piece here, which is called Mixed Blood. And first I'm going to speak to the S word. So he told me last week on the phone that this was a piece that he made when he was in Idaho doing his master's work. And at the time, there was legislation around getting rid of the word squaw in place names, because if you don't know, that's a slur against women. And so they were trying to update all their place names. And in the end of the legislation, before it went through, there was a Euro woman who said that she was okay with it, and so they kept it. And so this is a protest piece relating to that. The map here in the background, which is really exciting for me to get to see this in real life, because I've been staring at this little image of it, so what a thrill. But this map here is marked with all the places where it's still inappropriate. The use of red on this figure here is to reference the use of the word red to refer to Native people. Thank you. The Land O'Lakes, butter, and then this picture right here are to give us examples of different places in our contemporary shared culture that give us the wrong idea about this stuff. So that's how this piece was made and the different components of it. Yeah, you missed the first part. Yeah. I did. Thank you very much. You're so good to me. And now this piece is way more personal. It's called Mixed Blood. So this is an image of his father after he had just moved to LA, and he was feeling displaced culturally because, well, he didn't have a landmass there, and cultural kind of or community kind of contact. So he was having a hard time, and this is a piece that comes into a bigger body of work that there's probably 144 cells that are other images of Native culture, some prototypical kind of images that we're really used to seeing, and they all have this sort of photo manipulated color added to it. Some are blue instead of red, and then when they're butted up together, it becomes sort of a flag. Okay. Now, when I asked him about the geometric sort of direction that the red is placed on here, we started having a conversation about blood quantum, which is really a touchy conversation that we're starting to figure out now is a big problem. So blood quantum, if you don't know, is a genocidal agenda of the U.S. government created to exterminate Native American people. Because it's a system of diminishing returns. So if my child is half, then his child will be, and his child will be, and eventually we won't exist anymore. And so this is a strategy of genocide that the U.S. government has invented and brought us into, again, with it, because we also sometimes in our tribes are doing the same thing. So this way of dividing the space is also of where the color goes is also to kind of speak to those questions about, well, what part of you is cultural? Which part of your, and those kind of questions, like what's your percentage and what part of your life is Native? And those things are really hard to define and kind of awkward because culture isn't defined with a mathematical equation. It's like if you were talking about your gender, well, which part of your life is female? It just is, it's your point of view. It's your point of view in everything, and so you can't really define it mathematically or with some kind of a division that way. So this piece is sort of speaking to a lot of those ideas. It's really exciting yet daunting to do this in front of the person. So jump in if I'm screwing up, please. All right. So I think it's a really generous piece because, one, it's talking about all this incredibly tough stuff, and secondly, because it's so personal, to use something, from home like that is a really big deal. So these are a couple of those pieces. He teaches here at the university, so it's an incredible thrill that you could be here with us. And so I guess if you've got questions about his work, you should ask him, because he's here, and that's incredibly valuable, and so he's here in general. Are you guys with that stuff? Okay. So next, since I'm standing right here, I'll talk to you about Gail's piece. I would consider his work to be contemporary. Now, do you have traditional training?
Yes.
Okay. So he's the powerhouse too. He's got it all. But I think all that knowledge really informs the work. I mean, I think if you have all of those richnesses in your stuff, then it makes the work have all those extra layers that can be really valuable. So thank you for being on the spot in 18 different ways. So this is a piece that Gail Tremblay made. She teaches out at Evergreen. Let me find my notes on her so I can give you appropriate bio information. She's in here. She is. So this piece is called It's Not a Copper Tone Tan. It's critical. Okay, there's a lot of critical politics up here that we're really lucky to have. It's really neat. So she was thinking about, do you guys remember those old copper tone tans where there's the little girl whose shorts are being pulled down by the dog and you can see her tan line? So Gail was thinking about how it's funny how while, and this is her language, brown people are treated poorly, yet Euro-American people are always spending all this money to become tan and brown, and she thought that was kind of funny. And so the film here that she's using, this film stock, is it's got a copper coating on it, and it's used to collect the sound part of movies. And then this part, the film part here, is kind of an orange. Gail teaches at Evergreen and has for a really long time. She teaches poetry and dance and art and filmmaking, both the theoretical, historical, making, all of those kind of things. And so one of the assignments that was given to the students was to make something out of Super 8 film, or Special 8, or whatever that's called. And so she did it too, and the first one that she made was one of these baskets. It's based on, like I said earlier, these ash splint baskets that are one of her traditional trainings. She was traditionally trained to make, and so she cross-applied those ideas to these baskets that she makes with film, which are pretty awesome. When you see them now, they are all different kinds of sizes and scales, and the ones that, nope, it's in there somewhere. The ones that she makes that you'll see now are like sometimes like this big, like really neat and big and round. Traditionally, the ash splint baskets from her tribe, to get the round shape, you had to cut the ash splint. And so she didn't want to do that with the film, and so she created this square shape, which they make square baskets, but there's less of them. Eventually, she solved her issue with a twining technique to make the round shape. It's really exciting now, her work. It's the end of film, as we know, which is sad, but maybe good for some other reason. We'll find out later. Technology is cool. But so at the University of Evergreen where she teaches, I don't think I said that right, but at Evergreen where she teaches, they are switching over all of their films to digital, and so she has this mountain of the end of the materials. And so there's all these incredible leader baskets that she's making. So leader is the beginning of the film before it gets into the images, and it's just like a straight color, right? So it'll be green or yellow or red or what have you. And so she's got all of these interesting kind of layers to it. The latest body of work that she just had at Froelich, which is the gallery next door to mine, is all the anthropological films from the 60s and 70s about Native Americans that are complicated. The imagery is all traditional life stuff, but then the narrative, what's being laid over top, and the educational component is oftentimes wrong. So she's decontextualizing that and reappropriating it to this new kind of form, which is political and mind-bending and incredible somersaults of excitement. Well, you know what I'm saying. And so those baskets are really spectacular. And if you look at the Froelich website, you can see those baskets, and they are the later generations of this. This stitch right here is called, I think, because I don't know the split baskets as well as I should, but I think these may be the strawberry stitch. So she's taking in lots of these traditional stitches that have kind of content embedded into them and bringing them in, which is a really additional kind of a beautiful thing. There's one called a frog that she uses, so she's got them going both ways, up and down, and it's powerful. She, again, is she's one of our powerhouses like Jason. She's got all 3 of the trainings and all 3 of the kind of works. So in her contemporary work, it's painting. This is her customary stuff. Her traditional is in jewelry as well as basket making. So that's Gail, and she is really important too. She's about to retire, so we'll get even more art out of her soon. I cannot wait to see what she does. These 3 ledger drawings, they're really neat, and I was really lucky to speak with this artist too, and I've got to find my notes on him because it's really important. So Dwayne Wilcox, and I'm going to find my notes before I start talking. So Dwayne is an Oglala Lakota artist. He was born in 1954 and has been making art at the professional level since 1987. He lives in Rapid City, South Dakota. His work is housed in collections and museums around the world, and he speaks about his work regularly at institutions all over the country and has had numerous exhibitions and has been chosen for many awards. His work has been written about and included in many magazines and books. I know it seems redundant, but these people all have incredible careers, and it's really important to note all of that stuff. In describing his work, he told me, in the Lakota tradition, there's a sacred clown called the Heoka. He is the one who does things that are considered out of culture or rude, but he does these things in order to create a reality check and produce laughter. Laughter is a form of real medicine, for the medicine question I had earlier. You have to be able to laugh at yourself in order to heal. He says drawing reflects that humor. I see that as a part of the old values of a traditional life way. He goes on to explain the use of the ledger paper. Pictographs, or traditional visual language, were once put on a familiar thing such as hides. That changed with the disappearance of the bison and the loss of freedom to hunt when the reservations bound the native people. The first paper on the Great Plains was found in used ledger books from white merchants. That paper became a new medium to my people, in addition to the color pencils and inks available for trade. Like beads and beadwork, which were also traded, paper from ledgers had become a traditional form of art called ledger art. The piece we are going to look at today, You Can Trust the Government, Ask Any Indian.
You guys got a chance to get the book then?
Did you? Okay.
We could lift
Yeah.
it up.
Yeah. This piece, we're going to look at 3. This piece and 2 others.
Is this the one you were reading?
Yeah, that's the first one we're looking at. Scary.
They're so fun.
They're so funny and then really super heavy, and the heavy is what I'm going to bring with you today. The first piece, You Can Trust the Government, Ask Any Indian, is based on bumper stickers you see on the reservation. His latest favorite is Decolonize Your Mind. That's what we're trying to do right now in here. He's poking fun at the contention between the U.S. government and the Native world. He spoke of his involvement as a youth with the American Indian movement. He was a member at about 15 when a Vietnam vet came and spoke with them. The vet told the kids to go back to school, chase girls, and play basketball. He asked them, how many women have you slept with? Things like that. Releasing the young ones back to their lives is a pretty monumental thing to do. A lot of those American Indian movement guys had nothing to lose, he told me, but the vet had the wisdom to see that a lot of these kids were getting involved and that it would be better for everybody if their lives and their energy was preserved for the future. So this is a goofy looking piece, but he's talking about super, super heavy stuff, as he is with the rest of these 2. The second piece I'm going to share with you is this one, and it's called You May Cut the Cheese. Good, you already know what that joke means. And farts are always funny, right? But it's talking about a side effect of lactose intolerance. And when I spoke with Dwayne about this piece, he pointed to the government commodities and the introduction of dairy to the native diet. Prior to the commodities, milk was only used as an incense, not as a food. And he said that the commodities only took 3 generations to destroy native health. He pointed to diabetes and obesity just to start the list, and that these things were not problems before the government taking over the way of life that has to do with food. So he tells you this really heavy thing with this really goofy joke. And so I asked him about it because I just thought it was funny, and I got that there was something else going on, but when he was explaining that it's to introduce the conversation of the commodities, I was like, oh, well, we need to talk about that. So that's what that one's talking about. This guy, I'm going to put it here because I don't want it to touch Dwayne's. Okay, how? Okay. So this one is called Wow, Full-Blooded White People, which may not need a whole lot of explanation, but so he's flipping the script on the marvel that white people have for the authentic native person, that objectification. We've spoken of some today. And it also points to the alienation that some native people feel for white professionals and that world. But also the kind of reverse awe of white culture, you know, that's kind of, and it's so super funny because this instantly makes it really clear how weird it is to treat a native person like an object, and to, you know, so there's all of that kind of stuff. So there were some wonderful stories he shared with me, and he, you know, and then he had to go deal with his dogs, and so we had to get off the phone, but he was really very generous to speak with me all day about all of these things, and yeah, I can't wait to meet him one day, so we'll see.
I think we have something on video.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'll have to look that up. It's so interesting because I don't always like want to stalk people, you know, in the old, you know, in the computer, and so I rely first on those conversations. So it's depends on how far I have to go to get their face in my head, but I will definitely check that out. Thank you. So the next piece I'm going to speak to is this Kay walking stick down here. Kay is a teacher of mine, has been I worked with her a lot when I was in New York. I didn't study at Cornell where she taught, but she was retired by then. But I was connected with her through my connections at the Smithsonian, and she's been a great mentor and help to me. So Kay Walking, I'm speaking of this piece here. Kay Walking Stick is an artist with a dual cultural identity. She was born to a mother of Scotch-Irish descent and a Cherokee Indian father in 1935 in Syracuse, New York. She did not know her father, but her mother raised her to think of herself as Cherokee. This dual lineage is expressed in her art making. Walking Stick received her BFA from Beaver College in 1959 and her MFA from Pratt, my alma mater, in 1975. She was a professor of art at Cornell University from 1988 to 2005. Walking Stick works in a variety of media, but primarily in oil. She uses acrylic, watercolor, mixed media, encaustic, copper, charcoal, and gold leaf in her making. She's also a printmaker. With her prints, she produced a book called Turning Leaves, You're an Indian. Walking Stick is a recognized artist in a number of movements and arenas in the art world, including the Native American work, Native American education, and the feminist movement. Her work has been shown with many popular artists of the feminist art movement, such as Judy Chicago, Faith Ringgold, Miriam Shapiro, and the Guerrilla Girls. During her 40-year career, she has had 33 one-person shows in venues across the U.S. In addition, there have been countless group exhibitions of her work in the U.S., Canada, and Europe. Her works can be seen in 36 different museums around the country, including the Metropolitan Museum of Art, all the way to here. And Jerusalem, and I mean there's like this many, and so I'm just going to jump to it. Walking Stick is known in particular for her mixed media diptychs that juxtapose symbolic, abstract landscape and representational landscape. Walking Stick's early paintings have rich painterly surfaces, layers of paint and wax. In the mid-1980s, she began creating diptychs that paired stylized landscapes with rich abstract painting. The resulting interior spaces of the canvas served as complex emotional metaphors. I do not see my paintings as landscapes per se, but rather as paintings that describe two kinds of perception of the earth. One view is visual and fleeting, and the other is abstract and everlasting. These paintings are my attempt to express the mythologically inexpressible and to unify the present and the eternity. Many of her diptych paintings from the 1990s are based on sketches that she made in her travels while on teaching and lecturing assignment in the American Southwest and in Italy. Of these, she says, "No doubt the diptych form is interesting to me because I'm biracial. Two sides singing in concert, each very different from the other, yet united as a whole. Moreover, this use of the double image also explains the push and pull of nature and culture, mineral and spirit." Walking Stick shares the relationship Native Americans have with their materials for art making. She goes on to say that these natives, whether they are an active part of a tribe or not, live a double life. Walking Stick's book, Turning Leaves, So You're an Indian, is a book of comments made to her over the years by white people. This work by Walking Stick was included with that of the work of other artists in a contemporary show called Indian Humor at the National Museum of the American Indian. The strongest theme of the show, the common thread that tied all the works together, was the clash of the American Indian values and those of the contemporary world. This clash of values between two cultures is a constant theme in Walking Stick's work. She explains, good, risky, original art is being done by Native Americans, and it's this work that must be shown and supported by serious galleries and museums. Thanks, ma'am. This art has been developed by individuals educated in the tradition of 20th century modernism, but also in touch with their Indian heritage, their cultural differences, and their spiritual concerns. It is deserving of serious critical analysis, and it takes no great leap of faith to analyze or appreciate it. Between 1996 and 2003, Walking Stick traveled frequently to Italy. She painted the Alps and began to pair these mountains with figurative elements, diptychs containing sensuous mountain crevasses that fold and ripple into lush visual spaces on one side, on the other a dancing couple, both sides under a shiny metallic sky. The physicality and sensuousness of these images are both poetic and erotic. The piece Night Magic we are looking at today from 2001 is a part of that body of work that came about in this country. When I spoke with Kay about this piece, she told me that it came from a sketch she made on the train going to Tucson. The mountains are based on the geographic formations that surround Tucson, Arizona. She described the area as exquisite, rugged, naked, excepting the cacti. The image of dancers from her is a reference to the dance, a form that expresses all states of being. We do it for war, for marriage, birth, death, she said. We've always danced for all sorts of reasons, men, women, all societies. It's a universal. In Native culture, like birds, we dance as a part of courtship. The dance really covers a lot of ground. In the piece Night Magic, it is an expression of love. She went on to explain dancing was one of the few activities where, when you were growing up, that you were permitted to touch members of the opposite sex, barely knowing them. So it was this idea of touch. This work is about how things feel physically, about how good things feel in the light of the four directions, indicated by the crosses in the corner of the print she told me to tell you, not the light of the moon. So that was what she told me to tell you. So I have, a mountain of more things to tell you, but I think that I am definitely out of time. So I would definitely encourage you to look into this work. That one right down there is a Marie Watt, Rick Bartow, Lillian Pitt. Those are the people that I spoke with you about today that I haven't gotten to we haven't analyzed their work. And then these Quick to See Smith prints are also really amazing. All of it's amazing. So I wish I had about a week with you so we could look at everything. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, really. Okay, so I built this lecture out of mostly people that I know, and I am only over in this part of the country, And so what you should extrapolate from that is this wealth is all around you, and it goes all over the whole country, and we're so many. And so when you're doing your research, go into any museum, archive, and start looking through it and start really kind of finding these folks because they're all around you. And like I said, this is just the tip of the iceberg, and it's really thrilling stuff. So, and it's there to learn from. So, any questions? No?
Do you think if we could informally maybe go up to your gallery and maybe we could informally hang out? But before we do this, I do want to mention a little bit about Jean Quick to See Smith. She grew up, she kind of traveled around, but she's a member of the Salish Kootenai tribe, and now she lives in New Mexico. And she went to school as an older, kind of non-traditional student. I think she was probably in her 30s when she went, already had a family. And she's kind of, I think, at the forefront of contemporary Native American art. And it's because of her, in part, or in a big part, that we have the museum has a collection of contemporary Native American art. She has been really instrumental in building that collection. She's a printmaker. She does these huge paintings, and we have a couple of those. I mean, they're 8 feet wide, and they're giant. But she gives us each one of her prints that she makes. She will give us a copy of that. And she's connected us to a lot of local artists and Montana Native artists. And that's been really wonderful for us. And when we were deciding whether or not to have this space dedicated to Native Americans, we were a little bit concerned about it because we didn't want it to be considered marginalization in any way. But we did want to have a space dedicated to it because in some ways it forces us to keep on looking, and it's also an invitation to Native artists to share their work with us. So, and it's because of Jean that we do this. When she used to come pretty regularly to visit her family, so she'd drive through, she'd fly into Missoula and then go up to Ronan. But she was always stopping here, and she's getting older now, so we don't see that much of her. But I just want to encourage you to look closely at her work. And you will see a lot of it if you continue to come to the museum.
All right.
Thank you.